Welcome to episode 4 of the Pickleball Breakdown with your girl, Jilly B, and your coach, Scott C. If you missed us last week, you guys, that's because I lied to you. Scott and I were actually in the Bay Area for the Dink Sanity event with the Bay Area Breakers and Jeremy Lin and Michael Chang. So much fun. But we are back now to our regular scheduled programming today and next week, every Wednesday at 2 Pacific. You know where to find us. Speaking of where to find us, you guys, I want to remind you that this is actually a podcast, which means you can listen to it anywhere you normally consume your podcasts, not just on YouTube. But if you want to see our mostly smiling faces, yeah, check us out on YouTube, and definitely do not forget to hit the subscribe button so that you can get notified when our new episodes drop. So Scott, on our first episode, we covered the lob. Then we covered the serve, then the second shot, the return of serve. And I asked you what you thought we should do next. And being the math major that you are, you said, Jilly B, let's do the third shot. So you guys, if you don't think your third shot is important, then I guess you don't think winning points is that important. Have you ever gone 10 minutes straight in a match and realized that you haven't scored a point and it's been like 1-1 or 2-1 for 10 minutes? Yeah, that's all about the third shot. It's called kitchen arrivals. So Scott, my first question for you, and you know it's not a first question unless it's a trick question. What is the third shot and what type of shots can you hit as a third shot? I want to see if you know them all.
Okay, well, in pickleball, the serving team has to allow the service return to bounce.
Yes.
So you serve, you return, and now you let that ball bounce, and you have to hit a third shot as the opponents have arrived at the kitchen. The returning team always has the easier job getting to the kitchen, and so now how do I get from typically the baseline up to the kitchen? I've got a few shots. When I first learned the game, it's like people said, now you take that third ball and you need to drop it, hit it slowly so that you can work your way in and get up there. But it's a difficult thing. When I started 5 years ago, it's like you could also drive, but the paddle technology wasn't what it is today. So the drive was not played nearly as much as it is now. But driving and dropping are the two main ideas. I mean, we briefly spoke during the lob discussion about a third shot lob. That there are a handful of situations where that is an option, but it's way down the list on my list of priorities. So drive, drop, lob, and then kind of I think Zane Navratil is making this shot popular, kind of the drive drop, where it's like it's kind of a purposeful 60% drive with the intention of meeting the feet of the person running in.
Yes.
I'm a huge fan of that. He when he played San Clemente, I was watching a few of his mixed doubles matches, and he executed that play every time he served to his when his female opponent was unstacked and had to reverse the stack.
Yeah.
He was just expert at taking that return and putting it at the feet.
He's the king of it.
I think that's kind of a new hybrid third shot.
Totally agree.
Okay.
All right, Scott. So you got the lob. I thought you were maybe going to let that one slip, but how could you after our first episode all about the lob? What this was my trick. What about the third shot ATP? Come on.
I have executed one of those this year.
What?
It was in a rec game, not in a tournament.
That's amazing.
But it's something that when I see people who like to angle their serves.
Yeah.
Like as soon as someone has a really nice angle serve out wide, I really start looking for, if I'm on a court that has space, you need a lot of space on a court. A lot of these courts aren't big enough because you'll just run into the side fence. But if you're on a big court and someone has a good angle serve, it is available.
All right, so we want to know from you guys listening at home. Drop it in the comments. Have you ever hit a third shot ATP? I think I have, only in singles, never in doubles. So I love, Scott, something you said. Obviously, there's the drive, there's the drop, and then we talk about this hybrid shot. I like to call it the drip. I think Zane calls it the drip. We talked about this on our other podcast over a year ago, that I thought this was going to be the future of the third shot. And it's something I've been working super hard on. You have been pushing me to work on this, because I'm definitely a drive it as hard as I can, or, about 60, 70% speed, because you never want to hit something 120. So if I tell myself 60 or 70, I'll hit it like 80 or 90, And then obviously I love the like slow drop, give yourself time to get in. But the way the game is going, this hybrid shot has become so, so, so important. So do you fundamentally agree with that? Like 60% of your shots, are they now drips? And how could someone at home execute a drip? What do they have to think differently about? Because I have to think about it very differently than how I used to hit my drops.
So I think about when I attempt this shot, I think about a couple of things. I think I really do want to hit this with my drive technique, but at 50 to 60% of the pace. And when I slow down the pace to 50 or 60%, I should be able to control my height over the net. So if I have better control over my height over the net, and my pace went down, that ball, it's a pickleball. It's a plastic ball. It's going to start dropping. It's the drives that you hit hard that stay in the air, and so they don't get a chance to drop. But if you take the pace off and you control your height, and then also, like, if you think about trajectory, it's like, where's the apex of the ball? I mean, we don't want to get too technical, but if you can get the apex of the ball on your kitchen side so that it's dropping as it comes over the net, that is also kind of that's the idea of the way you want to play it. But to me, to be simple, is hit it 50 to 60% and then low over the net, and that ball will be dropping before it gets to their kitchen.
I agree with all of that. Something you said really resonates with me. And a girl who does this so well on tour is actually Emily Ackerman. She has one of the most sickening drips you have ever seen. And we were training the other week at Los Cab in Orange County. And I said, hey, give me a drip like that. Because I had just helped her with a two-handed backhand roll. And then I was like, all right, I want to borrow something from your game now, Emily. Give me your hybrid. And so she looked at me, watched me hit a couple forehands, and she said, when you go to hit a forehand drive, your technique, you turn more. You don't look the same as when you're hitting a drop. So what you just said, Scott, was like, emulate your drive technique and don't swing as hard. And I think that that's the most simple way of explaining it that I've seen, at least the most impactful way to me. So I totally agree with that.
Yeah, while we were at Dink Sanity last week, I got into a few rec games with the members there, like a couple of the higher level members there. And it's like, well, I don't want to go up there and then lose to the members, right? So it's like I kind of had to bring it. But the shot, this is the shot that kept working, is I would hit the kind of the off-pace drive, and then my partner would kind of crash in. Now, I did have a lot of success winning these games because Jessie was my partner. So she would close in, and every time my drive got below the net, they would either just straight up miss the volley or pop it up, and she would crush it. And so this is a great, I'm bringing this up not just to brag, but that this is a good way of handling bangers, people that just want to hit everything hard.
Yes.
And this, like, we were playing two aggressive kind of 5'5" level guys that were more athletic than me. They were just young and good and powerful. Well, what's the answer to them?
Right.
And a lot of times people say, well, you just want to make them play soft. That's hard to do.
Yeah.
So this little off-pace drive was kryptonite, because they were having to volley from their knee. My partner was in a really, nice aggressive position, and that.
Well said.
That was a very high rate of success on that play.
I love that. Let's talk about the fact that people say the third shot, singular. I hate that. I wish we could change the vernacular. And I was just listening to this podcast that was very cerebral. It talks about how important language is to our minds, and getting the language right before we can really understand a concept. So I think we put ourselves on the wrong foot by saying the third shot. How about approach shots, right? It's not singular. It could take multiple shots and multiple different types of shots. So talk to us about how many shots it could or should take to get in? Or is it just one and done? Hit one shot and go.
For me, I almost never expect it to be, I have to hit one drop and then I'm just going to be there. It's a third and then a fifth and then and honestly, it's like my seventh needs to get better, because if I pop my fifth up, what people love doing is rolling. They reach out and roll that thing to my sideline, and I've kind of recently been working harder on covering that little short hop seventh when I'm almost in, but I still have to finish the job. So yes, it's gonna take multiple shots to get in, and positioning is just so important. Because there's two of you trying to do it.
So what you're saying is it's okay if it takes a third, a fifth, a seventh. In fact, it's the rare case that you hit a perfect shot and go in. It's the rare case that it is singular, right?
Yes, especially against, like, if you're playing against a very good opponent. Yeah. If people are hitting quality returns, it's very tough to just take a quality return, take the pace off of it. If you're going to hit a perfect drop, give yourself time to run in and you're there. That's very difficult.
So I do this drill with my students. They start in the back. I'm at the kitchen, and I feed them a ball and I say, you're going to hit a third and you're going to take one step in. You're going to plant your feet and you're going to hit a fifth, take a step in, no matter how bad they are. I just want to see you hit and step. And what I'm trying to help them understand is this notion of the split step, right? Like the stop before your opponent makes contact. Can you talk to us a little bit about, okay, now you've hit your third, now you've hit a fifth. Where are you? I mean, you just said how important court positioning is. So give us some like court positioning 101 we should all be abiding by.
Yeah. So when people ask, when my partner's hitting the third or the fifth, should I just race in? Like, where should I be? And I would always teach, when I was teaching at the park to the 3-0, 3-5, 4-0 universe, the answer I would give them is you want to be slightly in front of them.
Yes.
So that you're watching them hit the shot, and then you're evaluating the quality of their shot. So now how far you can get in is directly proportional to how good their shot is. And so you need to get good at judging how good is my drop, how good is my partner's drop. You need to know that, because what I don't like seeing is, I don't like seeing someone hit a perfect drop and then it bounces in the kitchen, and then the other team lets it bounce, hits it back to them, and you have to do it again.
Yeah.
If you've hit a perfect drop and then haven't made any ground up, well, now you have to hit.
What was the point?
The hardest shot in pickleball again. So you have to get good at judging, like, not only your partner but your own. Like, how good is this drop? And you can kind of hear when you watch pro pickleball. One thing people say is they'll hit it and they'll say watch. Well, I don't really care for watch, because I feel like people that do that, they say it every time, not just when they hit a bad one. But what I will tell my partners,
I just want to pause right here, because that is so funny. The last MLP, I was saying watch, and I was like, I have never said that in my life. Why am I doing this? I hate saying this. I'm saying it on every single one, and it's giving me a complex that I'm going to hit a bad third shot. Why am I saying this? What am I doing?
Yeah, and you probably played a rec game with someone who said it.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, I'm communicating with my partner.
So bad. I like go, right? Like, hey, I hit a good shot, go. Or I'll literally say, Scott, I mean, you've heard me say this. I go, drive. And I get so many people that say, aren't you worried your opponents are going to hear you and know what you're going to do? I'm like, I don't care. Then they know they're going to get the ball driven at their chest.
Yeah, I'm a bigger fan. I will say this. It's like, as soon as I hit a good one, I will say to my partner, that's good. Let's go. As soon as I hit it, I'm like, oh, that's good.
Yeah.
If it's good, it doesn't matter if the opponent's going to know soon enough, and we're going to be standing at the kitchen. So, and
people forget that you can communicate with your partner. I always say you get to cheat in pickleball. So if you're not cheating, air quotes cheating, by literally informing your partner of how good or bad your shot was, why are you giving your opponents an advantage like that? Like, why are you bypassing the opportunity to literally tell your partner exactly what you want them to do? And I would say 90% of my students under communicate. I have never had someone come to me who over communicates on their thirds and their fifths with their partner. Have you?
Well, yeah, well, to me, the people that say watch almost every time is over communication.
Yeah, I agree.
And I call it over communication because if you're saying it every time, it's now meaningless.
I agree.
And if you tell me watch and your ball bounces, now your credibility with me is shot too.
Okay, so let's talk about what that means. So when Scott says, when you see that ball bounce, so what we're saying here is when you see your own third or your own fifth bounce, guys, that's blood in the water. You're a shark and your opponents are bleeding the second that ball bounces. Now, granted, assuming it doesn't bounce super, super high, but even then, it is now your job to not waste that shot. You and your partner have to start applying some pressure. So when do you stop moving? When do you have that split step moment, Scott?
That's a really good question. That is so subtle because the answer is right before they're going to hit the ball. Mm-hmm. But if they volley it, if they reach out and volley that fourth or sixth or eighth, right, then I need to stop now. If it bounces, I have time for possibly two more quick steps and then stop. And so the distance that I can cover if it bounces, I can get in so much further. But then I need to stop as soon as they're going to hit it, because if they let it bounce, there's so many players who are good now at, they take a step back and then they're just going to they drill kind of mini ground strokes. And so you're stopping as they're hitting. But if it's bouncing, you can get in further. That's why you don't want to let it bounce if you don't have to. Exactly. You'd like to take it out of the air and keep your opponent back and kind of try and keep the advantage.
I want to reemphasize something you said that was so good a couple minutes ago about where our eyes should be as our partner hits a third or hits the fifth. We literally should be watching our partner. And so what does that mean? It means sometimes you have to turn your entire body sideways. And this is so important. I want to insert a visual clip of this because I don't see my students or amateurs or rec play players literally turning enough as they go in. It's going to feel like you're turning sideways because you're watching the ball come off your partner's paddle face. You're watching the trajectory. And as that ball ascends to its zenith on the other side of the court, that's when you start uncoiling your body and you start moving in. So Scott, would you agree with that physical body turn can be so important?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of am imagining if my partner, if they return to my partner and my partner mm-hmm. let's just say like on the baseline hitting this mm-hmm. this third shot, I would like to be 4 or 5 feet in and then mm-hmm. kind of maybe turned at 90 at kind of 45 degrees so that I can watch my partner hit this shot and then as soon as they hit it, I'm really sort of following it with my eyes and my, it's like I'm going to follow it in. But like by the time it gets halfway, I'm going to know, is that a good shot or do I need to just hold my ground because this next ball, they're going to hit this next ball hard. If it's not a great drop, well, they're going to hit a high volley very hard at me. I have a much better chance of playing that if I am 4 feet in front of the baseline than if I came all the way in. But what I don't want is if I stay all the way back, then they're going to drop shot. We're just zero threat if I'm all the way back. Someone's got to be a little bit in.
So let's say you made your way a little bit in, but oh shoot, you're 5 feet in and you misjudged. You thought it was going to be a good drop and the opponent's actually a little bit taller, reaching in, and you are having an oh shoot moment. What do you do? Do you back up? Do you move forward? Or do you just go dead still?
Great question. So I will tell people you can't, even in that situation, you just get low and just watch the ball. And this is why you drill. Like, even if that's an overhead,
Hmm.
If someone hits a full on overhead at me and I'm 5 feet in front of the baseline, I feel like if I can get my paddle on the ball, I should be able to at least get it back over the net one more time. Now, if they hit it away from me, I can't get to it. But what you don't want to be doing is moving while they're hitting. If they're moving while they're hitting, you have conceded the point, in my
I
opinion.
agree.
Like if you aren't still while they're hitting that hard shot, you've lost the point. You can't be moving. You're not going to be able to catch up to it. If you're running, you're in desperation. That's kind of a different situation. But in the case of I've moved in 5 feet, my partner's drop is not terrible, but is just too high, and this is going to get hit hard. I am
Love
planting.
that.
And I'm getting my paddle down, right? We kind of when you talk about transition, where are they going to hit this ball? I don't want my paddle up at my waist, because if they hit it that high, I can just get out of the way. It's going out. They're going to hit it, should they hit it? They should hit it really hard somewhere near my feet. Well, that's where I'm going to put my paddle. And if I can just get my paddle on that ball, use their pace and try to block it back. But do not be moving while that's happening.
I think if there's one nugget of truth, one wisdom bomb that Scott has dropped in our 30-minute session today, it is so important to focus on that, you guys. This notion of when in trouble or when in doubt, stop. Be still. Don't sprint backwards. Don't sprint forward. It is incredible what balls we can get back when our center of gravity is low and our paddle is down. It is an amazing, beautiful thing when you let your quiet eyes, right, Scott? We talked a little bit about that earlier in our 101 session before this podcast. When we have our eyes quiet and our body stable, it is incredible what we can do.
I would just add to that, for the people who, if you're running because you don't want to get hit with the ball, you have a better chance of getting hit if you're running. So like your fight or flight instinct, if your instinct is flight, it's like, well, you're actually going to, like, the flight is going to get you hit. Your best chance of not getting hit is holding your ground. Now, this is slightly different. Like, this scenario is I'm 5 feet in front of the baseline. If I'm at the kitchen on the receiving end of an overhead, it's like, that's where, well, depending on how easy the overhead is and how close, well, maybe I do need to just concede, turn my back, and hold my paddle out. So that is slightly different. But if I'm anywhere in the midcourt, if I'm 4 feet behind the kitchen line and someone is hitting an overhead, I am going to stop and I'm going to watch, and I'm there for it.
Yep.
And just like you said, like, I've got a chance of making this if I stop beforehand. I can put my paddle on this ball.
I'm there for it. That's our next t-shirt, Scott. Low dink tolerance, and I'm there for it. I love that. So, Scott, walk me through, how can someone get better at poaching? So, you guys, in case you didn't know, when your partner hits a really great drive or a really good third or fifth shot drop, as evidenced by your opponents reaching in, their paddles down, or the ball bouncing, right? Remember, we talked about blood in the water. Newsflash, it is now your responsibility to do something heroic and amazing. Do not waste that opportunity. So, Scott, talk to me about how someone can get better at poaching and how they can practice poaching.
Oof. Well, so I think being good at poaching kind of comes from having good patterns. I feel like I do my best poaching when I tell my partner, like, hey, let's try and drive to this spot, and if you can hit that spot, I am just going to sell out and go. So so I kind of pre-plan it with my partner, that it's like, hey, on this play, so you're gonna drive you're gonna drive cross court to the incoming returner. If you get that thing low at all, I'm going to come straight in. I'm not going to leave early so that the opponent can't see it. But I am going to full send as soon as he volleys it. I am going. And so I think a good way to kind of build the confidence in poaching is to have a specific play. I know where this ball's going. If my partner puts it there, I'm just selling out. And I will do the same thing for him. I kind of tell him, and for me, it's not always when I drive, but it's like there's certain people we play, and I'm like, hey, if I drop here, and I'll say it before the best thing is saying it before the point happens. If I drop here, if I land this drop and he hits it with his backhand, just go. And it's like I'm thinking specifically of my partner Jose, but he runs that. Like when I give him early permission to just sell out and go, it just works so well. And in close matches, a couple of well-timed poaching points is huge.
I absolutely love that. I have never conceptualized the poach in those terms of, hey, when you hit this specific style shot, I'm sending it. I'm going. I've always thought of it more like, well, I'm just assessing my partner's third and fifth. Like, how good is it? If it's good, I'll poach no matter kind of where it is, which kind of leads me to my next question, which is what spots should we be aiming our thirds at? I have this dinking game I love called Tic Tac Left Toe, which is we use cones. I'll put an image of this on the screen. We use cones, and what this does, it really distills in your mind that you have these 3 key dinking spots, which is essentially the right side player's left foot, and then the lines. Those are your 3 spots. Let's just simplify it. So Scott, are those the same 3 spots we want to drop?
In general, yes. It's funny when I think about where should I drop the ball. There's different ways of looking at it, right? You're answering this question from a geometry perspective.
Yes.
But a lot of times, the personnel perspective is the most important way to answer that question, right? So there isn't just one way to answer that question. So first of all, it's just so that people know, like, don't think that, oh well, this geometry perspective, it makes a lot of sense. It should go like the right person's left. Basically, you kind of said to both, if it's righties, both backhands, or to the other sideline. And it's like, yeah, that makes very good sense. Those are the places I would like to go. But sometimes the personnel make the answer different. So I do like before every match to talk with my partner and say, hey, not where do we want to drop, but who do we want to drop to? And then once you get the who, then you can kind of say, all right, well, is it to their backhand side or to their forehand side? And so I like that. And that's kind of the fun of pickleball is there are multiple ways of answering the same thing, and they're both valid. And so, yeah.
I think that's really well said. On our last podcast, we hinted at the 5 discussion points that we always have with our partner before stepping on the court. And we actually had a listener reach out to us and say, hey, what are those? So I think this is a perfect opportunity to discuss this. It's actually 6. So these are the 6 key items that you and your partner should be totally on the same page about prior to stepping on the court. So number 1 is, where are we returning? To whom are we returning? Number 2, where are we hitting our thirds? Number 3, who are we focusing on attacking while in transition? Number 4, what's our dink pattern? What do we think is going to generate pop-ups for us? Where do we want to dink the ball? Number 5, where are we attacking our first? Where are we sitting on our second? Basically, what combo of 1-2s are we aiming to put together? And number 6, where are we sitting in general on our counters against these 2 opponents? Scott, is there anything that I missed here, or anything that you think would be important to elaborate on?
I think probably the most practical thing to elaborate on would be, who do we return to?
Yeah.
Because the answer to that has different answers based on personnel. You might think, well, who do I return to? I want to return to the weaker player because they'll miss more drops, or they won't put the thirds in play as much, and that might not be
a misconception.
The
That's
case,
a big misconception.
Because, a lot of times you want to return to the person who you don't want at the kitchen most.
Exactly.
Right, like often in mixed, it's like, returning if it's a big tall guy who's going to be super aggressive, well, I don't want to return to his partner and just let him just run in and then just wreak havoc. I often want to return to the big scary athletic person and keep them back as long as possible. Now, recently I was coaching in a match where one player was much worse than the other in transition, and so it's like, hey, we want to get the ball to this person in transition, so we're going to have to return to them too. And it's like you may have to deal with a few more drives, but you'll get more side outs, because when you return to their partner, well, now you're just giving him a free pass in, and he's not having to hit any transition balls.
Yeah.
So it's very personnel kind of dependent. But I think that's kind of that's the first one.
I totally agree. On a slightly different topic, I think everyone should have a key to every shot in their bag that is like a fallback. And there are days where I haven't been able to hit the side of a barn with my third. And that's unacceptable as a professional. It's literally unacceptable. And I don't have that problem in any other part of my game because I've shored up this ancillary plan, this plan B, this notion of, hey, when things aren't going well, I fall back on, maybe it's my cross-court dink. And so if I'm not dinking well to someone's left foot in front of me or down the line, I can always fall back on my cross-court dink or XYZ shot. So my point is, I think we should all find a key to our thirds because they're so important for days when they're not on. And that means maybe it's a drive. And like when we were playing Dink Sandy last week, I literally said to you, I'm just coming from Chicago. I have just been playing a Franklin. I cannot hit a drop to save my life coming to California and now playing a Vulcan ball, but I can drive it really well. And I danced with the girl that I brought. So do you think it's important for everyone at home to play around with drops, drips, drives, and be able to have this like mental fallback plan that if all else isn't going well, you can do this one thing well with your thirds?
Yeah, like for sure. I think, if someone says, should I drop or should I drive? It's like the answer to should I drop or drive is very individual. Like,
yeah,
it depends on your skill. Some people who come from tennis, they believe in their drive right off the bat more easily. And it's like, so for them, it's like, well, if you can develop a drop, your ceiling in pickleball will become higher. But if you just commit to the drive all the time, you may or may not be limited depending on how good it is. But it's like, you do need to develop a kind of what I call a drive to make. It's like when you talk about which returns should I drive and which ones should I drop? And to me, the harder they hit it and the lower it stays, that's the more difficult third. And so on a difficult third, if it's hard and low and deep, I'm not going to try and hit a drop on that because a bad drop just gets crushed. Whereas a bad drive, I could still survive and maybe hit a fifth shot drop. And so the more difficult, the bigger the return that's coming at me, the more likely I'm going to kind of hit this drive to make. And now I'll deal with their volley and hopefully survive the point. Whereas if I try and hit a really good drop off of such a difficult shot, I could miss it short, or I could, give them a shoulder high forehand, and which they're going to crush. And now I'm just way behind in the point if I hit a poor drop versus a bad drive that's in. People just don't do a lot with their fourth shot volleys sometimes, and now you kind of get a free pass.
I just want to reiterate that because it's so important for everyone listening at home. If you have a good drive, do not be scared to pull that out when someone has returned the ball really well, because it's probably easier for you to drive that ball and then get a decent or borderline easy fifth shot in than it is for you to try and hit a miraculous third shot drop off of your back foot. And my sister's a 5-0. She's getting better every day. And I just said to her, where's your forehand drive? Why are you trying to hit miracle inside out forehand drops when the player has returned 1 foot into the baseline? And she's like, yeah, you're totally right. So she starts driving in front of her, and all of a sudden she's getting these really easy fifths. So I didn't mean to just repeat every single thing you said, but I think it's so important.
Yeah, it's like when you're in matches and you're struggling, you need some go-to moves.
Yes.
And it's like, to me, the go-to move, if we're struggling to get to the kitchen, like the first thing I'll kind of try and tell my partner, it's like, hey, let me give you permission to rip a serve so that we can get an easier third. and then we'll kind of try to work our way in there. Or it's like hey, I am just going to drive to make at the backhand side of whichever of them has the weaker backhand volley. I'm just gonna drive at this person's backhand volley. Let's really focus on this fifth, and we're not gonna get in off the third. We're gonna get in off the fifth. Or it's like I'm gonna angle my serve so that the person is running, and as they're running, it might open up something else. I can hit a drop, but it's like But when I'm struggling, I don't just continue. Oh, let me just keep trying to make this. I will try to run a play. Let me try and run a play and make this easier.
Over the weekend, CJ Klinger and I played against Mari Humberg and Eric Onsens, and it was in the semifinal match, APP Chicago. And I think Mari Humberg has one of the most unorthodox, interesting approach shot, third shots, fifth shots, seventh shots. She first off slices the ball, and she literally the entire time, Scott, and I tracked this because I wanted to talk about this on our podcast, she didn't drive one ball. I mean, you could have hit her like the floater of the century that landed at the kitchen line. She ain't gonna drive that ball. But guess what? She got in 100%, Scott, in a 3-game, 2.5-hour death battle against me and CJ Klinger. The girl didn't miss a third or a fifth.
Yeah, that's
so what's the lesson? What's the lesson for our listeners at home?
I mean, the lesson we talked about it before is know what you're good at. Like whether you should I drive or should I drop? It depends on your skill set. Mm-hmm. And does that mean she can't hit a drive? I'm sure she can. She's a great athlete and was a great tennis player. But it's like, what is your skill set and what is most effective? Well, clearly for her, hitting drops. And she puts so much spin on the ball. When that thing lands on your side, it is not fun to deal with. It is a handful. You got to do what works, and that definitely works for her.
Last question for you, Scott. When your opponents are trying to reverse the stack, will you always aim to the person running in?
With almost always. The exception being if you're playing let's imagine we're like serving from the left side. So the girl is returning from the left side, mm-hmm. and the guy is mm-hmm. in the middle of the court, basically. What mm-hmm. pro guys do, and just aggressive partners. This could be in gender too. If it's unstacking, you've got a super aggressive alpha left side player. When the person returns from the left and now they have to run in and find their spot on the right, their partner is so heavy middle that their line is open. So it's like, yes, and people so want every time just to, like, someone's just going to drive it at that person who's running. And so, like, the big guy, usually who can cover more court, gets over there and helps with the forehand and just volleys that thing and everything's neutral. But that guy does not get challenged with a drive down his line often enough.
Agree.
And so I think, like, if you're playing mixed and you've got the girl on the left returning and you've got this this big dude who, like, because these guys are so aggressive and mixed, they really can do a lot, and you can't let them. Like, you really do have to look for those opportunities to take advantage of their over aggressive positioning and posture. And the third shot drive down the line, especially when we talk about the return, where should that return go? Well, people return down the line, right? So in this theoretical case, the girl's returning down the line and then hustling over to her side. Well, on that down the line return, what does it leave available? It does leave a drive down the line open.
Yes.
So you want to have vision of that. But you need to have the vision before it happens. I agree. That it's not spur of the moment.
I just want to say thank you, because on our last pod covering the return, I thought a lot about what you said. In this case, I was playing with CJ Klinger over the weekend, and I'm playing left. So when I was on the right, I needed to switch and get to the left. So I actually hit, which I never would have done in the past before listening to you on our last podcast. I took my return and I hit it up the line as deep as I could to Eric Onsens. I start sprinting left, and you're totally right. That ball now that he's hitting requires a lot more time to travel. is going to slow down, and it's going to bait him into taking CJ on down the line. And that was super, super impactful for me. So I want to thank you for that. And you would have been proud, I did hit a few balls behind the guy for a winner on my third as a drive.
Yeah, no, Eric, he is 6'5". He is extremely long, and he's super aggressive. He's a really nice mixed player. I mean, I watched you guys play together in Newport. So I watched him play at the US Open too in mixed, and it's like the guy does all the aggressive things you want. So when you're playing someone like that, you need to know the opportunities to how do I take advantage of that? I can't just let this guy dominate this match. And it's like, yeah, you can, it's easy to say, well, just go behind the guy, but you have to know, which is the right ball, which is the right scenario to do that. And this, the third shot is kind of one of those times you want to look for that, because the guy is usually straddling the center line and there's an opening.
100%. Well, Scott, we've been at 40 minutes. Hopefully that was 40 impactful minutes for our listeners. If you guys have any questions for us, please write us at thispblife@gmail.com. I did not major in math, Scott. Shocker. Actually, it was marketing, Spanish, and Italian. But I think I can guess maybe what our next episode might be on. Does it come after the number 3?
I think we should go for the fourth.
I'm still waiting. I want to do an esoteric mental deep dive, how to play your best mentally on the court. But yes, maybe after the 4th shot, we'll do that one.
Yeah, I like that idea. We can because the 5th is, we talked about the 5th today. So I do think we're gonna be off this sequence soon. But let's talk about the 4th next.
I love it. Well, don't miss us next week on the 4th shot. Don't forget to subscribe. I'm Jilly B with your coach Scott C. See you next week. Let the people see your daughter.
Well, this is one of them.
Is she purring? I can hear that.
Yeah, she's got a loud motor.
A loud motor.
Yeah, she doesn't like to be handled too much. Overstimulation.